And now on the line is John O'Callaghan from Dog Advocacy Ireland. John, welcome back to Near FM.
Hello, Darren. Good to be back on Near FM, and always great to have an opportunity to talk about dog welfare.
Okay, John, today is our first interview on Near FM since August, and in that interview in August we spoke about some adverts you were due to have on Irish radio stations. I understand as well that in recent times there are another couple of big dog welfare stories and the lack of dog welfare in relation to puppy farms in general. This is a big question, John, but can you start off by giving me a summary of how your work with Dog Advocacy Ireland is going since August in general?
Yeah, Darren, I'm actually very pleased with the progress that's been made because there's been, obviously it's a two-strand approach. You know, the strategy for Dog Advocacy Ireland is to have sustained engagement with media to highlight and expose the negligence that surrounds the dog welfare legislation negligence, and the enforcement of that legislation is just appalling in Ireland. And, you know, so that engagement is happening. There's a lot more of it happening. And I'm at the beginnings of engaging with the political system, in other words, with politicians. There's a mountain of work to be done, but we're making some great progress, you know. I've some stuff in the pipeline that I can't actually tell you about right now, unfortunately, because it could blow some of the projects out of the water if I'm to speak about them publicly, you know. But you know, there's been some radio interviews, there's been newspaper articles. In fact, on yesterday's Irish Independent, there's a legal firm who are doing some pro bono work for Dog Advocacy Ireland, have been on board with us for the last year at least. And there's a wonderful article there outlining a lot of the aims and objectives of Dog Advocacy Ireland in yesterday's Irish Independent. So if it's not too late, I'd like maybe people could refer to that article, because it talks about many of the issues that what our current policy surrounding some of these issues, and then obviously the suggested improvements that are quite easy to make and are achievable and would benefit dog welfare hugely.
Okay, was that in the Sunday Independent, John, or the Irish Independent?
No, it was in yesterday's Irish Independent.
Okay, that's cool. Okay, John, I understand that since the formation of Dog Advocacy Ireland, you have been following and even attending a number of court cases around the country in relation to the lack of dog welfare, haven't you?
I have indeed, yeah. And just before we just touch on that, Darren, if you don't mind me mentioning, one of the committee members of Dog Advocacy Ireland, in relation to this, the sustained media exposure, which obviously Dog Advocacy Ireland is looking for, in order that the public will become aware of Dog Advocacy Ireland and its aims and objectives, and hopefully people will support us and log onto the website. But one of our committee members is actually on Virgin Media TV on the 6th of January on Ireland AM. So, you know, Dog Advocacy Ireland will feature on there. So that's kind of, you know, in answer to your first question about what kind of progress has been made since August.
Okay. I read a couple of articles about the Anne Broderick case in Cork, and I'm shocked, I have to say, that the judge allowed her to keep any dogs. I imagine that you think, John, did that her being able to keep any dogs is outrageous, do you?
Absolutely, I couldn't agree more, Darren. I mean, I don't know. I'm not overly familiar with the legal system, but Anne Broderick, as you'll be aware, and hopefully the listeners will be aware, was issued with a closure notice for her Doneraile dog breeding establishment. The North Cork Kennels is the official name of it. She was issued by Cork County Council with a closure notice of that premises. Anne Broderick, in her wisdom, decided to appeal that closure notice, so hence the court case. And I suppose in some way the judge had to confine himself to what was before him. That was an appeal against the closure notice. Now, thankfully, the closure notice over the 3 days of the hearing and the evidence given by some serious people, especially on the prosecution side, that's on the Cork County Council side, for issuing the closure notice. I mean, there were 2 veterinary officers from Cork County Council who gave, damning evidence on their various visits to that premises, Anne Broderick's premises, and what they found there, which led to the ultimate issuing of the closure notice. And then the dogs who were seized from the premises on the date of the closure notice, those dogs were taken by the ISPCA to private veterinary practitioners who did not know where these dogs came from, so they couldn't have had a bias towards Anne Broderick or any other premises or individual, because apparently the way the ISPCA operates when they seize dogs in these circumstances, or any animal for that matter, they do not notify the inspecting veterinary practice of the ownership of those dogs, or where they've come from.
Okay. There was an article on the Euronews website last week about the EU planning to bring in legislation on the breeding of dogs. Do you know anything more about this, John, in terms of the EU?
Yeah, well, look, a lot of that legislation, I've had a kind of a brief look at it, Darren. I'm aware of it, but I'm not sufficiently familiar with the detail. Okay. But yes, the proposals that they have. And let's hope they're more than proposals. I mean, we have all these proposals and then they're just sitting in a file somewhere. But like in terms of dog breeding establishments, for example, and the number of breeding bitches that are permitted, there's a lot of good proposals in the EU Commission rule proposals there, which I would wholeheartely support, and any right-thinking person would support it. I just hope that they take action on it and just not let it sit in a file somewhere just to be forgotten about.
If the EU legislation goes ahead, there may be or will be probably, I think, no need for the Irish Oireachtas to enact legislation on puppy farms, would there not?
As I understand it, it's obligatory for the EU countries to comply with these proposals.
Okay, I won't keep you much longer, John.
Darren, if I could just go back. Sorry about this. Yeah. If I could just go back to the question that you asked me about the ruling in terms of Anne Broderick and she being permitted to still have 5 breeding bitches. Yes, I am appalled. Like you said, I am appalled that Anne Broderick is permitted to have anything to do with dogs. Personally, I feel that she should have received a lifetime ban from having anything to do with dogs. The court case is over. Those are my views, and I think, given the overwhelming, damning evidence of the condition and the suffering of those dogs on Anne Broderick's premises, she should definitely not have anything to do with dogs ever again. But unfortunately, that wasn't the judge's rule.
Okay.
By the way, just to follow up on that, I believe there's some activity happening at the moment. I don't know how far it will get, but there are some authorised authorities, that being the Gardaí, the ISPCA, and I believe the local authority, which is Cork County Council in this case. They are authorised bodies who could bring a criminal case against Anne Broderick for the appalling condition of those dogs. I mean, the veterinary evidence given in court and their reports is very, very, very detailed, Darren. Obviously, you don't pick up on that because, a journalist, a newspaper journalist, will cover it and glance over this stuff, but they can't give you the full detail. But it was horrific, the evidence presented in court by the various veterinary officers on the prosecution side. So, there's no doubt in my mind. The judge mentioned a couple of times that there's no suggestion when Anne Broderick was in the witness box herself and she was being cross-examined or what have you, the judge made a point on several occasions that there is no suggestion that there is any deliberate animal abuse in this case. Now, whether he wasn't prepared to go there because the evidence was absolutely damning, and if you're to go through the 5 freedoms of animal welfare, Anne Broderick was in breach of all 5 freedoms. So if that doesn't constitute cruelty to animals, I don't know what does. But maybe, in fairness to the judge, he was very much Judge Roberts was very much on top of the case. He was very tuned in, and, you know, he did affirm the closure notice, and maybe that was the only thing within his remit.
Okay, John, just to come towards the end of our interview, I know you're saying at the start of the interview there is good things happening with Dog Advocacy Ireland. Like, on the basis of the last few years, I know, like, coming into 2024, John, are you hopeful that 2024 will be a good year for dog welfare in Ireland?
It depends, Darren. I would have to say that initially, in the first few months of the new year, we're going to see the pattern of dogs. You know, these cute puppies that people bought prior to Christmas. I mean, look, Darren, you know that dogs or puppies are not for Christmas; they're for life. You know, and unless you've done your research, you've done your homework, and you're prepared to give that commitment for a 14 or 15-year period, but then please don't the dog. You know, so again, we're going to see this pattern of dogs being abandoned when we come into the new year, because the puppy that they bought prior to Christmas and thought it was a great idea, suddenly now they haven't got time for it, or they haven't got the money to feed it or care for it or whatever. But for whatever reason, it happens every year that these poor dogs are abandoned and they're handed into pounds of rescue centres all over the country. You know, and we're going to see the same thing at the beginning of 2024. But that's on a very, I suppose, low-key note. But I am hopeful that towards the middle of next year, 2024, that there will be revelations in terms of media exposure of dog welfare and the negligence of that in Ireland, which will shake the whole thing up, you know.